All right, welcome everybody. We're actually live on our Zoom platform, but interesting, we're live on Facebook and we're also live on LinkedIn. So we're streaming multiple platforms, which is very interesting. We're going to add more as time goes on, but this is really getting fun because instead of now broadcasting to 500 people, now we're broadcasting to thousands. So we're always upgrading. But anyway, thank you for tuning in. If you by chance are on LinkedIn or Facebook, we're going to be talking about some building and construction, uh, one major topic. So this is Lance Luke, the national building expert. You're tuning in to Ask the Building Expert webinar series produced by myself and Martin Pea, who's the back end guy. He doesn't like to talk much, at least for now, but when we do other webinars, uh, I gotta tell him to kind of slow down. Anyway, welcome. This webinar is presented by Construction Management Inspection LLC, which is a inspection and construction management firm located in Honolulu, Hawaii, and that's a company that I own. And that's probably the only commercial I'm going to give to you. Let's talk about the topic today: 14 types of building structure components. And you may ask, well, what's building structure components? I know what structural components are, but we don't know what the structure you're talking about. But basically, it's components that have to do with the structural nature of a building. And in any building I'm going to be talking about applies, whether it's a house, a townhouse, a high-rise building, shopping center, office building, apartment building. So the information applies to any type of building. Now, the structural components is basically the support of any kind of building. What makes the building stand up? Okay, now I'm not going to be talking about the insides of a building, interior, such as doors, walls, windows, electrical, plumbing, air conditioning, that kind of thing. So mainly the building shell support. And if you look at a high-rise building, it's basically the structure of a building as opposed to all the interior components. There's thousands of components that go into a building. And basically, how did we get the 14 types? Well, I'm going to be just briefly explaining to you each type of the 14 types. So when you think about how a building's constructed, you have basically a piece of land, vacant land, and the idea is to put a building on that property, whether it's a one house or whether it's a 40-story high-rise condo building. It's basically the same concept. So let's say you have a vacant lot. Now, where do we start? Well, if it's a big project, you're going to have to do a little grading, for preparation of your footings or foundation work. Okay, so let's say we did that. We cleared the land, we did enough grading, and now what do? Okay, of course, if it's a big building, you basically have to dig down deeper to start laying the support structure of the entire building. And the components that comprise a support structure, that the name is called footings or foundation. Okay, so the terms are used interchangeably, but the footings are basically made out of concrete or some other solid material. It could be steel, and that's the basis of forming the structure or the foundation, and then you have your foundation walls after your footings, and sometimes the footings could be an entire acreage, or let's say the building is a shopping center, and the whole footprint of the shopping center is 1 acre, while the footing of that shopping center is basically 1 acre of concrete. Okay, and it could be, you could call it the foundation of the building. Okay, now what happens after you lay that foundation? Now what? You have to have walls, right? So the next component is your foundation walls, your walls that are connected to your footing or your concrete slab, and they start going vertical, right? And that's how a building is made. First, you have your footing, foundation, stable, and then you start going up vertical. So even like a 1-story house or 2-story house, it's the same procedure. You have a concrete slab, which is your basically footing, foundation, and then you start constructing walls. Well, when I say you, it's actually, unless you're the contractor, you're not going to be the one doing it. You hire a contractor to do that. So typically the foundation walls are made of steel, concrete, or masonry, which is basically hollow tile CMU blocks with rebar and filled in grout. So the hollow tile holes are filled in, and that forms your foundation wall. And then next you have, let's say it's a 2-story building, so your walls are up 2 stories. What happens next? Well, you have to install your beams, your structural roof system, or your floor or walls, okay, connection. So there's these big beams, and the beams are normally, if you look up in the ceiling, without any ceiling there, you have these horizontal members that are going to support the next floor or the roof. And it could be a component made out of wood, steel, or it could even be reinforced concrete. Okay. And then you have your columns, which are vertical structural members that support the weight of each floor. So if you have a high-rise building, you're going to have columns on each floor supporting the floor above it. Okay. And then there's a truss system. So normally when you get up to the roof, you have framing members that are structural in nature, and they're supporting your roof. And that's called a truss system because it's kind of, if you look at it, it's interconnected triangles made out of steel or wood. Maybe you may have seen when you're driving on the freeway, 40-foot flatbed truck with trusses, and these are wood that look like cross beams, and it could be out of wood, it could be out of steel, but normally a truss system that's made out of steel framing is done at the job site rather than trusses already made at a factory and then trucked in to the job site. So, and then you have your joists, your floor joists or ceiling joists. They're actually horizontal members that support the floor or ceiling above. If you're talking about, more than one story. If it's 1 story, you could still have a joist or truss system. But if it's 1 story and it's a roof, your truss system is commonly called rafters also. Okay? The rafters, if you think of a church, like a gable type shape of a building, your rafters are your members that are connected to the top of the roof to the top of the wall of the building. And it's not horizontal, it's angle. Okay, so that's a rafter system. And then shear walls are basically solid, mostly solid walls that are vertical, and they're there to withstand wind, earthquakes, and so forth. And then you have a bracing system that are lateral bracing to support your walls. And then you have your tie rods, which are tension members to connect the structure all together. And then normally bolts, support bolts on bigger types of development. And then you have your girder system, which are large horizontal members that support other beams and joists. So they're commonly made out of wood, steel, or reinforced concrete. So each building type is a little different. Normally on a single family house, it's all wood frame, right? But as you go higher in commercial buildings, now you're talking either concrete or steel frame. And then on the roof, you have what's called purlins, which are horizontal members that support the roof covering. Now, in lieu of the purlins, you could have your plyboard roof decking, like on a single family house or on a large high-rise building. It's normally concrete. Okay. And then there's two other components, which is a lintel. And normally in the Roman or Greek architecture and building, the lintels were fairly common. Supports the weight of anything above it, like open door or window. And I was in Rome, Italy, maybe 6 months ago, and inspected the Colosseum and all these different Roman buildings and all that. And it's pretty much that type of construction. And then you have a sill, which is a horizontal component that's either on the bottom or on the top. So if it's a wall, it could be a sill plate on the bottom of the wall. If it's on the top, it could be a top sill for a window or door header and that kind of thing. So basically, that's a brief run through of the 14 components really fast. So let's get right into looking at some images here. So what is a building structure component? Well, like I mentioned, you may have grading and you dig a huge pit and you see those columns there. So the substructure is what's basically below the ground, okay, ground level, okay, or sea level, basically. So you're going, below the sea level. It's a flat to get to the basement. So it could be a footing of a high-rise building, and let's say they put all these columns in for support. After that, it's all filled in with concrete or with dirt, and you don't see it because that's basically the foundation of the building. And then you're on a big high-rise structure, the next area is going to be normally your parking deck or the entrance to the building, and that's normally on grade. Okay, so the substructure is what's below grade, and then the superstructure is everything above it. So there's two terms: the substructure, which is below, the superstructure is above. So another term for superstructure is whatever the building components are that's above ground. That's the superstructure. Although sometimes the superstructure may be a couple floors below ground, and then it starts taking off, 40 stories above or however high the building is. Okay, so that's basically the building shell, the foundation. Okay. What are the components to a building? Well, we talked about the footing, the foundation, the superstructure. Every building has basically the same major components, regardless of if it's a house, one house, or a shopping center, office building, high-rise condo building, and so forth. So by basic major components, I'm talking about foundation, your walls, your roof, things like that. So let's talk about the actual components here, and you can take a look at some of these images. So you have the first two items are foundation and floor, like I mentioned before. So the floor could be below grade, but normally that's considered a basement or basement floor. The terminology is like basement. Common language in construction would be, if it's a floor, it starts with floor one, which is basically the first level, and beneath that is considered a basement. So you could say it's like, basement floor, but people don't normally say that. They just say, our building got 5 levels of basement, and then floors above it that start from the lobby, on up to 22nd floor, something like that. So the foundation, you got a lot of concrete, a lot of rebar and all that, because that's the basis for supporting the whole building. Okay? And then they build each floor above that. So if you see a high-rise building being built, and if you're in Hawaii or other parts of the city where you got tower cranes because they're building high-rise buildings, if you watch them, and it doesn't have to be every day. If you go like once a week, twice a week, you can see each floor being built. And they use the tower crane to take up all their building materials, including concrete, right? Because they use a lot of concrete to build these high-rise buildings. So what do we have next? We have walls and columns. So as you can see from the image on the left, this is from an ancient building. It could be a temple, and the walls are just made out of cut stone, right? Like a pyramid. And then the image on the right is either Roman or Greek, or something like that. And these buildings were designed to have these huge support columns. And a lot of the buildings in the old days, they didn't use concrete. They used like marble and stone, and they just carved the stone to create, the look, intricate patterns and designs and all that. And later on, concrete was developed, and they started using concrete because it was a lot easier. Because can you imagine digging out a huge length of marble and the effort it takes to labor to actually carve a design that we see here? That takes a lot of work. So later on, they developed concrete, where you just make a form in the shape of a column, and you just, fill it with rebar, and then later on pour concrete into it and take the forms out, and then voila, you have a column in a short time period, rather than a long time period with these guys with hammer and chisel chipping out bits of natural rock to make the look of what you see here. So that's why it's amazing when I travel to Europe and I look at all these old buildings. I'm amazed at how it was built and designed, and I kind of get an idea of how long it took the workers to even make these buildings. It's pretty awesome. And then, as you know, we have staircases. If you're building over a one-story building, you're going to need a staircase, and then you know, your beams. So if you look at the image on the right, if you see the horizontal members on the top, right, that's beams, and your vertical members are wood studs to support the top beams, and then also the sill, the headers. So this is just a 101 lesson. I'm going real fast talking about these components. And then let's say you have your wall built, and then it's time to build the roof. So on a single family house or a townhouse or apartment building that's maybe 2 or 3 stories, 4 stories high, you're going to have a roof that kind of looks like what you see in the picture, if it's not a flat roof. Okay, so this is basically a hip gable type roof, and they're installing asphalt shingles. So if you see on the bottom all that wood colored section, that's the plyboard decking. Okay, so that goes over all your structural framing, and basically that's the roof structure. And then what the contractor does is he puts down roofing paper or some kind of waterproofing membrane, and then the asphalt shingles are installed. Okay, so this is one method. Now, on a high-rise building, there's what's called a parapet wall, and that's a wall that sticks up from the plane of the roof. So if you took that wall away, you're going to have this flat roof, basically, that anyone can just, if you're on the roof and you walk off the roof, you're going to fall down to the ground. So the purpose of the parapet wall is to act as a wall to protect people from falling on a flat roof. So that's what's called a parapet. It sticks up. It's a vertical structure that sticks up from the plane of the roof. So if you hear the term roof parapet or parapet wall, or just the word parapet, that's what it means. It's on the roof, and it's for protection. And normally the wall is made out of concrete, and it could be made out of different other materials, such as wood or metal. But mostly all high-rise buildings, the parapet is made out of concrete. Okay, so what other components do we have to discuss? That's basically it. So that's the 14 building structure components. And I have this slide here, opinion from the building expert, and it's me when I did an inspection of the Honolulu rail. And I don't really have an opinion on the structure components, but I'll be happy to answer questions when the time comes. And before we get to the Q&A, I don't even have much of a conclusion anyway about it, but I have a lot of other comments to make. Before we get into that, I wanted to talk about if you haven't attended any of our webinars before, you may have missed a bunch of stuff. We talked about different subjects, such as any other kind of specific building component. Like we've given a specific webinar just on roofing, concrete spalling, electrical, plumbing, cast iron drain piping, building code, working with a contractor. And all these webinars, although you missed the live version, we have it on our website that you can watch on demand. You don't need a Netflix account or anything, and it's all free, right? So we got a whole bunch over there. So I'll give you the website in a minute. what's coming up. Let me take a look and give you a short synopsis of our upcoming webinars. Okay, so um, these are the next webinars that we're giving, and we give 2 webinars on building and construction per month. Okay, so we welcome you to tune in. The next one is Aloha Stadium from Rust to Dust, and there's been a lot of talk about what's going to happen with Aloha Stadium. I'm going to give you kind of like a short history on the beginning to end within probably 30-40 minutes. So I'm going to breeze through that. And then I kind of switched up a little from construction and buildings, and we're talking about the real estate development process. Although it does pertain to construction and buildings, this one is more real estate development. What goes on in the developer's mind? What does the developer have to do from acquiring a piece of property to finishing a building? Okay, and it doesn't matter what kind of building it is. And then next one, I have water damage, flood remediation, and then another one on construction defect litigation cases. I'll be sharing with you specific cases that I've worked on as an expert witness pertaining to construction defect litigation. And then renovation is no vacation, and I put that together specific to homeowners who are renovating their houses. Okay, a lot of complaints from contractors against contractors, or homeowners who said they didn't know about these things, they could have planned better. Yeah, so that's going to be good. And then switching gears again from real estate, from construction and building to real estate, I'm giving a webinar on real estate seller disclosure, and that's going to be interesting. And then after that is International Residential Code, which is a building code pertaining to houses mainly. Cliff dwelling construction. I decided to do that because I was interested in houses that are built on cliffs and inside mountains. And then I got 3 more. Webinar on the Honolulu Rail, the good, bad, and the ugly. And the rail's open now, and I haven't taken another ride on it, but I'm planning to do that soon. And then after that, it's the Red Hill fiasco, which is kind of top of mind now. And then the last one is why hire a construction manager. People don't realize that they need an expert to help them, even if they're building a house or doing renovation. So that's what's coming up. And then visit our website, askbuildingexpert.now.site. Now, what do we have on that website? Well, that website is pretty huge. It started out small, but Martin and I have been working on it, every week. We're adding stuff to it. There's takeaways, there's PowerPoints from our webinars. There's, like I mentioned, webinar videos that you can watch on demand. We got some free books on construction and building matters. Like we got a free book on how safe is your building, and we have a couple other books that are on there. And then now is a good time for me to mention our BC book club. BC stands for Building and Construction. And if you want to join, you go to our website under publication section, and you can sign up for our free book of the month. And when you sign up, every month you're going to get emailed a PDF of our latest book. So right now we have How Safe Is Your Building, Monster Houses, Concrete Spalling Repair, Cast Iron Drain Piping, and we have the one that just came out last week, Premises Liability. And that has to do with slip and fall, trip and fall, some building code data and things like that. So we're really got our team working to provide you the free information. not only webinars, but even our book publications. So, you may be interested in, if you're don't have time to read it, you may want to just download the book, and so you have it on file, right? Because I'm not sure how long. By the way, all the books that I wrote are on Amazon for sale. And if you go to our website, you can get it free. So you're saving the $14.95. But I'm not sure how long those books are going to be available for free. So that's why I'm saying download it so you have it, so you don't have to buy it, right? We're all about providing free information and those kind of things. So now we get to the Q&A. So you got questions, I got answers. Lance Luke, phone number 808-422-2132. I get calls from all over the mainland, of course, Hawaii, local, and even some from all over the world. I mostly get emails. So Lance Luke at hawaiibuildingexpert.com. And it's fun for me to get emails from people who have watched our webinars or attended our webinars or even watched it on demand and email me questions about different questions having to do with building or construction matters. So I'm available to help. And right now, want to open it up for the Q&A so we can see if there's anybody that is still awake and asked any questions. So I'd like to bring Martin back and see if any questions came in on our various social media platforms. So Martin, are you around?
Yes, Lance, I'm here.
Okay, good.
You got my audio okay?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we had some earlier questions that have come in, and so far on live LinkedIn, no comments or questions, and on Facebook we had a comment here, so let me just share the comment since it's a live one right now. Here is this is from Dexter. He's just commenting that the DPP should address structural integrity and not act as if they are architecturally qualified. They are overstepping their intelligence. So that's just a comment for your comment if you want. Otherwise, I can get to the questions here too.
Well, I like to make a comment on that, but I kind of didn't quite understand the actual comment.
Oh,
So,
okay. Well, it's on Facebook, so you can comment on it through your Facebook also. So.
well, I wanted to comment live.
Oh, okay.
But
you can see it on your live Facebook feed, or I can repeat it for you.
I'm trying to go into Facebook now, but hold on a second.
All right.
Want to go and read the comment here. Oh, you know what's weird is I'm on my Facebook, but oh, okay. So let's see. Okay, so reading the comment is the DPP should address structural integrity and not act as if they are architectural qualified. They are overstepping their intelligence. Okay, so my comment to that is if you're talking about plan checking, DPP does have qualified designers, architects, and engineers reviewing plans and all that. So as far as qualifications, they are qualified. I'm not sure what the comment was related to. It could be a specific incident, but I've been working with DPP for over 42 years, and man, I got a lot of complaints about DPP, but not all of them are, well, there's complaints, but there's also good things, but unfortunately, there's more negative stuff that there or positive, and that's just the nature of the beast that we're dealing with. I have big projects, multi-million dollar projects where I have plans in and I'm still waiting to get permits. Okay, so that's just I have to wait too. And I run construction projects for a living, right? So I have a lot of suggestions for improvement with DPP. I mean, they're trying to do the best they can. Recently they switched to everything online, so it's hard to. I mean, it's supposed to be faster, but is it? I don't really think so. So we'll see. And then um, there's complaints about DPP slow in issuing permits and all that. And yes, that's true. They're very slow. I personally know some people, a couple, that their house got destroyed from a flood 2 years ago, and after 2 years they still didn't get their building permit. Okay, and sometimes it's DPP's fault, other times it's not. Now, when you talk about monster houses, yeah, DPP is trying to do their job to crack down, but in situations where there's people complaining, and there's two sides to the story. There's one recent article that came out about a family who is still waiting after a couple years to get their permits. But when you look into the details, it's not all DPP's fault, right? This family actually demolished a structure without getting approval. So if you don't follow what the building code is and what the law is, right, and you blame DPP for taking so long to give you the permit, well, there's two sides to it. If there's only like you did everything right and you still didn't get your permit, okay, well, DPP is slow, but are they really slow? Because when I ask questions, like people come up to me and said, oh, you're an expert at working with DPP and getting permits. Why is mine taking so long? And then once I investigate, I find out that, well, your architect, made errors on the plans and then they got kicked back. That's why it's taking so long. And then back and forth, back and forth. Oh, he put the wrong tax key on. So DPP is not going to approve it if you have the wrong address, the wrong street name, the wrong tax key, wrong information, or not enough information in the building plans, right? You submit plans and, wow, where's your elevation for this section? Or, I mean, it's pretty clear what needs to be followed. And if the basics aren't followed and it gets kicked back, then that's why there's a delay, right? So there's always two sides to the story. I'm not supporting DPP or supporting the homeowner. I'm neutral and I call it like it is. And, same way with working with contractors too. So hopefully that answers that question. If you have others, post it on Facebook, I'll be happy to give you my comment. And sometimes people don't like my comments, but that's okay. There's always two sides to the story, and I try and get my facts before I speak about things. That's why I wrote the Monster House book, because there's so many misinformation, disinformation, and the facts are there. So if the Monster House developers want to argue that they did the right thing, in my book, I actually have copies of DPP, it's copies of actual notice of violations from DPP. So, I mean, it's pretty clear that I'm not making stuff up because I'm giving you, the real facts. So anyway, let's move on to other questions that you have, Martin.
Okay, Lance, yeah, the questions relating to our 14 types of building structure components. Our first one that's come earlier is, what is the most important thing to know before I start constructing my project?
Okay, so this is detailed information that normally a homeowner, like let's say you're building a new house or you're doing renovation or remodeling. Normally the homeowner doesn't get into the weeds with all these different types of building components and all that, or types of materials. Generally, it's the contractor that worries about all that stuff. So unless you wanna not, I wouldn't use the term micromanage, but I can't think of a different term. You want to get more specific about materials. You may want to ask, and don't be surprised if the contractor tells you, "Well, why are you asking all these things? You don't really need to know. I'm just going to build, according to what you want and the plans. You don't necessarily have to know what kind of material I'm going to use or anything, right?" So just be aware of that. If you're really concerned about specific building materials, then ask for a list. Ask the contractor, can you give me a list of all the materials that you're going to use? And he might get perturbed and say, well, I don't normally do that. But as a consumer, okay, you're hiring the contractor. You have a right to know what materials he's going to use, right? And um, I'm currently writing a book now about working with a contractor, and with my clients that hire me to represent them, I always tell them, make a list and ask the contractor. I don't care if the contractor gets irritated at you or not, or ask, why are you asking? You're paying good money, hard-earned money, to build this new house or in addition to your existing house. You have a right to know what kind of building materials are going to be used, what kind of siding, what kind of roofing, right? So let's say it's wood frame construction and he's going to put the roof on. Well, what kind of roof? What kind of roof material? And this is a reason why you want to ask a question. You want to ask, like, okay, is it asphalt shingles? If it is, what brand of shingles? Right? What kind of warranty do I get? Is there a manual on how to install it and a manual on how to maintain it later? What if a shingle blows off the roof? Who do I call? Right? If the contractor's giving you a 1-year warranty and a shingle blows off the roof 2 years later, you're going to call the contractor. He goes, "Oh, your warranty's over." Call the roofing manufacturer. But if you didn't get the information and you don't know what kind of asphalt shingles used, well, how are you going to know who to call? See? So you want all these things up front. Basically, you want it all up front before you even sign the contract. Okay. So there's words of wisdom to all this. And why am I telling you that? Because I get calls all the time. Every week I get calls from homeowners saying, I'm not sure, doesn't seem right, or the contractor doesn't give me the information. I don't know like what kind of roofing material was used or siding. And so here's a takeaway. You're building a new house, renovating or building an addition. You want to know what kind of doors, what kind of windows, right? All these that come, building components that come with warranties. You want all that information. You want the warranty papers ahead of time. You don't want it after the project is over. You want to review it, because what if you go, hey, wait a minute, I thought I was putting in windows that have a 20-year warranty. What is this? According to this, it shows that it's only 10 years, right? So before the job starts, that's the time for negotiating back and forth. The contractor may tell you, well, you only wanted to pay X amount of dollars for windows, right? So that's the only windows that you get. You want to pay me more? You can pay me more and I'll give you a better quality of product, and then you could get the warranty that you want. So, and contractors have the upper hand because they know all this stuff. The homeowner doesn't. The homeowner is not versed in construction and building, so they're not necessarily going to know what questions to ask. That's why I'm leveling the playing field for consumers and homeowners. That's my job. I'm building a website called Avoid the Contractor Ripoff, and it has all a lot of stuff, secrets and all that that contractors don't want out, but it's gonna come out, so be happy for that. So sorry, I went on off on a tangent. So what's the next question?
Well, Lance, I think you answered the next question, but let me ask it anyway. The question is listing of different building structure components important? And is it part of the planning?
Yeah, I did answer that, and to be redundant or to repeat myself, make sure that you get a list from the contractor, okay? And ask for several lists. You don't know what kind of lists to ask for? Reach out to me and I'll tell you. There's what's called a schedule of values that have a breakdown. So let's say you're doing, building one house. The contractor tells you it's going to be $650,000 to build this house, and you go, okay, well, that's within my budget, so okay, I'll sign the contract. But do you actually know by breakdown how much things cost? I want to know, and I want you to know. I want you to know how much is it going to cost for plumbing, electrical, roof, laying down the foundation, putting the walls up. I want a breakdown. I want you to have the breakdown on all that, so you can add all those breakdowns up, and it should total 650,000, right? So that's another way. Another way is to get the material, breakdown of material lists, right? So there's all these good things to help. And the same situation applies if you're a condo board member or if you're a developer working on building or fixing a high-rise building. Okay, same concept. Ask for the same information. Give me a list of materials, what you're going to use. On my projects, I have to approve every single material, whether it's paint, concrete, caulking, whatever. Okay, so they cannot just, and once a material is approved, they cannot substitute unless they get approval. So they can't pull a switcheroo and, high grade caulking is specified or high grade paint or waterproofing. They cannot, to save money, decide to change and get a lesser value and use that cheaper paint or cheaper caulking and get away with it, right? Because you're paying for. When the contractor bid, he bid knowing that these are what he was going to use, or he should have bid on high quality things and not get the cheaper material just to save money. Okay, so what other questions we have?
He was Lance. You must have ESP. Let me ask you the next question. Does the information only apply to commercial buildings? Or does it apply to single house renovation and remodeling?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I did answer that question. By the way, if you guys have questions after this webinar is finished, it's not over. We're still welcoming you to reach out to us and ask more questions. Email is probably the best way than phone, because then I can respond to you better because I'll have the data. And sometimes it's hard because I may be on a roof or hanging off a building. And if you call, I won't be able to get back to you, in a timely manner. Okay, so what other good questions do we have?
Well, here's your next good question, Lance. It says, what will your suggestions for us as a condo board be? Our condo is planning to do a drain pipe replacement project. And some contractors said that they can line the pipe rather than replace it. We have never heard of this and want to be sure it is an effective option.
Okay, so this is kind of a little off topic because it's regarding plumbing, but that's fine. Your questions don't have to be pertaining specifically to the topic at hand. So I'll be happy to answer that. So here we have a situation with cast iron drain piping in a condo building. And I don't have details about what kind of building it is, but let's presume that it's a high-rise condo building and they need to replace the cast iron drain piping. Normally, you take the old pipe out and you replace it with new cast iron piping. That's generally the standard. But in this particular question, they're asking about pipe lining because they never heard of it before, and the contractors are telling them that it's cheaper. Now, it could be cheaper in some respect, but it may not be in some situations. So on pipe lining, what that is you keep the existing old pipe and you clean out that pipe and you put like a liner, epoxy liner in the old pipe, and then when that liner dries, then that pipe becomes more rigid and solid and in a better condition of pipe. Okay, now normally it's used for lateral straight runs like underground, or if it's in a building, you have straight run laterals, and then you have your vertical piping, straight down piping. And you could line those pipes, but what about the pipes that have all these T's, Y's, twisting turns and all that? Can you effectively line that? It's very hard. Okay, and if contractors tell you that they can line it, they probably could, but the caveat is, are they going to line it correctly? Are they going to follow the standards? There's standards of practice for pipe lining. And there's what's called ASTM standards, American Society of Testing Materials. And if the contractor says they can line it, they better be sure to follow the correct protocol, because I've inspected, I'm not a fan personally of pipe lining in high-rise buildings because of all the twisting turns and small diameter pipe. It's hard to line pipes that are less than 4 inches. Okay, and if you don't have a straight run, it's hard to line those pipes. If you talk to professional pipe lining associations, they'll tell you the same thing. And there's a protocol that needs to be followed. The protocol is you have to inspect the pipe first, right? You have to clean the pipe first, and then you have to line the pipe following strict protocol, temperature, ambient temperature of outside. There's a certain formula for mixing the resin, certain protocol on, actually lining the pipe. And then after the pipe's lined, guess what? You have to actually send a video camera down to inspect the lining. I've seen a lot of bad lining, and that's why I'm not a fan of pipe lining in high-rise buildings. It could work for certain circumstances. And if contractors want to argue with me, I'll say, fine, can you show me pictures of or video of pipe lining after? And did you guys test it? So there's pros and cons to it. So anyway, if you have more specific questions about it, reach out, and then I'll be happy to fill you in on information. I have couple of websites that I can point you to. I have photos of actually failed pipe lining, and you may be interested in that. And ask the contractor the question, right? Okay, so hopefully I answered that. We have any other questions or comments?
Yes, Lance, I have one last one for you here right now, and it is, are there any rules or codes that we have to be aware of using any of these building components?
Yes, so I'll give you an example. Let's say you have lumber. If you look at the image in the back of me, you see a lot of lumber and all that. there is a building code. So if you're working with a contractor, there's a code requirement that all lumber has to be treated for termites. Okay, and basically, when you go to buy the lumber, it's already pressure treated already, you know, by virtue of the contract, by the company selling the lumber. So that's already a given, but there's actually code requirements for installation of windows, roofing, all those things. So it's not like wild, wild west. So if you connect the building code requirements to these different building components, there's actually standards to follow. There's rules, there's building codes for each thing. So and the building codes, there's not only one building code. So when people ask me, oh, does this building conform to the building code? I normally throw it back and say, well, what building code are you talking about? They go, well, I don't know, the building code. And I tell them, there's the international building code that commercial buildings follow. And then if it's a house, right, single family house, there's an international residential code. That's a different code. So there's two codes for that, right? And then you got other codes that come into play. The more complicated buildings, like high-rise condo buildings they're building in Kaka'ako, there's like 10 or more different codes that they have to follow. There's elevator code, there's a gas code, mechanical code, plumbing code. So there's multiple codes. There's just not one building code, but in the general speaking, in the industry standard, is the building to code? Well, basically, the answer could be yes or no, using all these other codes that are applicable in that certain circumstance. So, yes, the building code has a lot to play in this whole scheme of things. So, what else we got? Any other comments?
No, Lance, I'm checking Facebook and checking LinkedIn, and no further updates or comments or questions here. But excellent job. Now I
Okay.
know I need to understand my building components.
Yeah,
And you
great.
did-
So on behalf of Martin and I and Ask the Building Expert, we appreciate you guys for tuning in. Reach out to us, go to our website. We got a lot of freebies. You might be interested in some of the books. If you have questions later or comments, and it doesn't have to be a question. If you have a comment, you know, we welcome that too. If you have any ideas for any future webinar topics, let us know and we'll be happy to consider it. We have a team that goes through and lets us know different topics by popular demand. And although we may not have one scheduled, we could do a pop-up webinar if there's enough interest. So it's all about us helping people, keeping your buildings safe and not get ripped off by contractors. So that's what we're all about. Okay, so we're going to sign off and hope to see you at the next webinar. Aloha. Thank you.